Thank you very much, Albert, and thanks to everyone here. We really appreciate your attendance. So I'd like to thank you all for the support you've shown us during this series. We're overwhelmed by the positive response we've received from public officials, water wonks, which is most of you in the room, and the general public, for that matter. But a special note of thanks has to go to the Sewerage and Water Board, which has been here faithfully for every single one of our installments. In great numbers, may I add. So thank you. That really means a lot. Over the course of the past 2 months, we've learned best practices in green water management from Houston, from Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Portland, and Washington, D.C. We've also learned about promising financing mechanisms to support the work in question. This evening, we bring the series to an end, a sad but appropriate end, I think, with a discussion of how we can bring some of these best practices to New Orleans through a practical, concrete set of strategies. In case you were wondering, there will be a phase 2 that incorporates learning trips to 4 of the cities from which we have learned so much this summer. We'll reach out to leaders in the mayor's administration, to city council members, and most importantly, to neighborhood leaders. I think the importance of reaching out to neighborhood leaders is obvious. We need to build a constituency around this, and we need to expose and teach neighborhood leaders about the incredible potential in a lot of the mechanisms and techniques that we've learned over the course of the past several weeks. This continued work, I really have to say, is made possible by a partnership we have, a really valuable partnership we have with the Cerna Foundation and with the Blue Moon Fund, who are funding this second phase. So we thank you. The point is really to establish cross-cutting relationships among appropriate officials, so public officials meeting their cohorts in some of these leading cities and neighborhood leaders meeting their respective cohorts will, we hope, create an environment where people can actually pick up the phone and say, hello, I'm encountering this specific problem. What did you do? Did you encounter such a problem? And if so, what did you do? So hopefully we'll be able to do that this fall or at the latest this spring. We're hoping this fall, though. But first things first. Tonight's session will be informed by an impressive array of our city's political and thought leaders, such as David Wagoner, principal of Wagoner & Ball Architects. Oh, there we are. I'm on all of a sudden, and my voice is really projecting. This is a power trip, pardon me. David Wagner, Cedric Grant, Deputy Mayor of Facilities, Infrastructure, and Community Development, whom we thank very much for coming. Marcia St. Martin, Executive Director of the Sewerage and Water Board. Jeff Abear, Executive Director of New Orleans Redevelopment Authority.
That's 1, 2.
Thank you. Councilmember Latoya Cantrell of District B, Councilmember Cynthia Hetch-Morrell of District D, and Councilmember at Large Jacqueline Clarkson, who is the President of the Council. The session will be moderated by Jeff Eager, who is a really impressive person, who is probably the most logical person to facilitate a conversation of this sort, as we're going to talk about special and really practical next steps in forming a strategy. So Jeff Eager is the Executive Director of the Water Environment Federation, the WEF, which sounds a little bit like wrestling, but sadly not at all has to do with wrestling. It's an international organization of water quality professionals. WEF recently adopted a new strategic plan which calls for the organization to continue its historic role as a leading technical and educational resource, while also leading efforts to communicate the value of water and champion the adoption of innovation in the water sector. Prior to joining WF in January 2011, Jeff served as Executive Director of Sanitation District 1, SD1, the second largest treatment plants and I'm losing my train of thought. The second largest clean water utility in Kentucky, with 2 major wastewater treatment plants and more than $1 billion in physical assets for 16 years. While at SD1, Jeff led the regionalization of 30 municipal sanitary sewer systems, implemented a regional stormwater utility, and successfully negotiated the terms of an innovative wet weather program that saved his community millions while providing for the implementation of model green infrastructure practices. So Jeff knows this stuff pretty darn well, and we're honored to have him. Before we start, though, just one note about our microphone situation. We had anticipated having 4 microphones in this room, that actually work. Instead, we have two. We wanted to have a microphone for the general public, but that's out. So you're just going to have to speak at the top of your lungs. So if you have to scream, that's entirely appropriate. Please do. And we're going to have to share the microphone with the distinguished members of our panel, so we'll do it. Oh, Julia's saying we have another microphone. We have a third one, so we're actually great. I think we're testing the extremes of this building, but that's what we're here for, isn't it, to push the boundaries. So with that, let me introduce to you, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Jeff Eager. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, everyone, and good evening. It's really, really good to be here. This is a pretty special place to me, actually. I have, I guess, a couple of personal connections and a professional connection. Personal connection is I'm actually an avid James Lee Burke reader. I read everything that he writes. I love the colorful characters and the stories that he weaves here. And it's also a personal connection because I have a nephew who was supposed to be here. Did he show up? Oh, there he is, back there. Who actually moved down here several years ago to go to grad school at Tulane and absolutely fell in love with your community and has refused to leave. And Brendan Eager and his friend Katie also, who is not from this area and has come here and has fallen in love with it as well. And so we were able to have lunch with them today while we were here. So a very strong personal connection. But professionally, I think the connection is that we have chosen that this is one of two of the locations in America that we host our annual WEFTech conference every other year. We were here last October with about 20,000 water professionals from around the world. Certainly a major economic impact for your city, but I was telling someone earlier, your Convention and Visitors Bureau and tourism folks earn the business. They work as hard at customer service as any vendor I think I've ever dealt with. So hats off to them, and we're going to keep coming every other year, I think through about 2018. So so it's a great place for us to be. I want to just go through a couple of things really quick, and then my job here tonight is really to try to facilitate the dialogue about how we can make a difference and how we can move this thing forward. And I think this is so impressive. It's great to be at a facility like this that actually models some of the types of things that we believe are so critically important in dealing with this stormwater issue. But I commend you for really focusing on this issue and having some of the experts from around the country here to talk about that. But you know, all the great information and all the great science and all the great technology really won't matter unless you have the human resource to make it happen. And even with that, you cannot simply rely on your elected leadership and your public leaders to make that happen. It really is all of us saying, you know, it is time for us to get involved and to make a difference. So if nothing else comes out of this, if, you know, maybe you've learned a little bit more about green infrastructure, hopefully you've learned that, you know, if this is an important matter that needs to be undertaken, then we need to make a difference with that. And as Marco said, you know, I have kind of lived it. I took over as utility director in northern Kentucky, right across from Cincinnati, Ohio, and we were just the wastewater treatment plant. We were a special district, and state legislation was introduced that allowed the city governments to turn over their collection systems. Now, that's the worst part of the business, really, to take over the collection system, but we went from 100 miles of line, if you put it all together, to like 1,800 miles of line, 125 pump stations, including river flood pump stations, the Ohio, right on the Ohio River. We built 2 wastewater treatment plants while I was there, or as we call them now, water reclamation facilities. And we initiated a stormwater program to comply with EPA requirements. When I started, I had about 65 employees. When I left in 2011, we had about 245. And so we had to expand our kind of campus office park to really be able to accommodate all of those folks. And when we did, we decided it was time to really model the types of things that we would want our community to emulate in terms of how to have your imprint on the environment, but still respect the environment. And I have to tell you that when we looked to implement a lot of these green infrastructure practices, we had to go through a couple of civil engineering firms before we could find somebody really willing to take the risk to do it. Because it is risky. It's not like the typical engineering science that says, I got to take it from point A to point B. And, is it going to be reliable? Is it going to work? And a lot of these things had really never been done in the greater Cincinnati area. And these are just a couple of examples of the things that we have on the campus at SD1, again in Northern Kentucky. We have biofiltration swales, so instead of the catch basins to catch the stormwater and put it in a pipe, it's a biofiltration swale that replaces that. We actually, the site is kind of a combination of letting nature kind of grow however it wants to grow. With native plants, it's taken a while to kind of make that work, but I was just there for a dedication a couple of weeks ago, and it is really amazing, what it has done. Porous pavement, we actually had the first both blacktop and concrete, and we had examples of both on the site. We had the first vegetated green roof in the whole greater Cincinnati area. Today there are several, including on our large regional hospital. The device down here at the bottom left is an oil water separator. We actually put that in the parking lot area where our trucks would come in and out of, so that the debris that would fall off of that would be separated. So we captured the oil and we recycled that effectively, and then the water, of course, went on out into to the system. We did implement a stormwater fee, an impervious rate-based fee. It was not popular. In fact, we were sued, but it was upheld. We modeled it after Louisville, who got sued, and it was upheld. So and it was contentious, and it's not easy. One of the things that we recognized that school systems in particular were really hit hard by having to pay a fee on impervious area. Now, where you've learned and talked quickly about some of these, that oftentimes there are credits for water quantity detention on the site. Most schools don't have bodies of water. They don't. It's a safety issue. They really don't want those around where kids are. So but we recognize that schools who are already really strapped for funding, how were they really? They're going to be hit even harder now with this new fee. So we implemented, and I still think, I don't know that anybody else has done it in the country yet, a water quality credit. So literally every fourth grade class in Northern Kentucky, we even have homeschool programs that do this as well, teach a curriculum on water quality. And we developed that program with the school teachers. That's been really well embraced with them. And then they supplement that with an on-site field trip. So we'll have about 3,000 school kids that came through our park in a year's time to learn about the journey of a drop of water. We actually used their parents as the chaperones to help to take the kids around, so that we didn't have to take a lot of our staff out there. We used a local store that literally had their folks come over and volunteer to do that. And you're really having an impact on a program like that when, for example, at the end of the day, I looked out my office building one time at my window, and I saw this little kid, pulling mom and dad around. And I recognized, because the kid had a name tag on from earlier in the day, the kid had gone home, told mom and dad about the program, and brought them back to show them what she had learned that day. So you're really having an impact with a program like that. So that other device was a water storage device. We literally did it to look like a manhole. But that captured all of the water off of our large garage, and then we used that to irrigate a lot of the landscaping. Funny story, we actually used inmate labor to help do a lot of the maintenance on the site, and it's probably a little bit, hope this doesn't offend anyone, but I was really concerned about their safety. And so I asked the jailer one time, I said, so jailer, what happens if one of them gets hurt? Because what I'm thinking about is, your insurance covered or my insurance covered, okay? I said, so what happens if one of them gets hurt? He goes, I'll bring another one. So that's not really the answer I was looking for, but really it's an amazing resource out there. And of course they love it. They get out and they get some time off. One of the other things that we did is we partnered with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. This is the notorious cut through the hill as you're headed north into Cincinnati. You can see the city of Cincinnati in the background there. And this was actually a very dangerous area of the interstate. They've kind of straightened that out. But this cut on this hillside was barren, and water was just really pouring off of there in rain events and actually going on down into the combined sewer system. So with some stimulus money with the state of Kentucky, we actually started this project to reforest it, and that's what it looks like today. And that was in partnership with the Kentucky Department of Transportation using stimulus money from the state. And at the bottom of this, a partnership with the city of Covington that they just unveiled this, and with the Department of Transportation, creating a series of rain gardens and biofiltration swales as well. What I wasn't able to get a picture, I wanted to show you that now the largest green roof in the area is the regional hospital, which is at the bottom of this hill as well. So a real partnership and a real difference that having those examples we're able to make. Now, this probably won't look too familiar to you, but this was one of our community service projects that our student and young professionals do every year whenever we come to a city. This was in your city park. And during Hurricane Katrina, the city park suffered about $43 million in direct damage from that park. And so what the students did is they planted over 5,000 plants in a wetland that's designed to remove silt and pollutants from rainwater runoff before it reaches the surface waters, and providing a wildlife habitat and recreational area for park visitors. Another significant feature of the wetland was to retain approximately 1/3 of the stormwater runoff from that part of the park. So not only do we come in and spend our money here and really educate and entertain, but we leave our mark on your community as well. Even some of our past presidents were involved in this project. You have learned a lot of examples, and I just want to we can all get on the same page with some of these, go through some of these very quickly, and here are some additional ones as well. And there are many, many more. I mean, every year more and more communities are being involved in implementing green infrastructure initiatives. Here's one in Montgomery County, Maryland. And this is an incentive program that uses community grants and the stormwater fee discounts to develop a rainscape rewards program. So recognizing innovative practices by the folks that are involved in this. This is a pretty clever idea. This is outreach, trying to, again, educate and inform folks. And this is a campaign in Vermont where they have these very colorful rain barrels, and at the top of those rain barrels are little like education lessons developed by the school children. And this leads then to the Echo Lake Aquarium and the Science Center, where there are kind of more hands-on types of activities that kids can be involved in and learn about the types of things. And then at the end of the program, they auctioned off these very colorful rain barrels and used the money to go back into the program. Lexena, Kansas has a rain to recreation program, and again focuses on public stormwater education, interactive, being able to walk these trails and look at the kinds of things that are there. Trading, probably maybe something that didn't get a lot of mention. Agricultural non-point source pollution is not regulated, and it is a leading cause of a lot of the runoff. And so there are a lot of initiatives now to go into trading with the agricultural community to try to be able to offset the cost of dealing with some of these issues. Low impact development, I'm not sure that this received a lot of talk as well. And the concept here with the LID competitions is to really break down the silos within the development community, give engineers, developers, landscape architects, and others a chance to experience with low-impact development in a low-risk environment. They also can break down some of the barriers that people have by getting more folks involved and having an education. There have been many successful competitions: Houston, North Texas, Philadelphia, Virginia, San Antonio, and I believe there is one that's underway right now in Washington, D.C. I know that you learned about the Milwaukee Green Seams program, the land conservation, where they're literally taking land and setting it aside to be able to help in dealing with these issues as a buffer. Green infrastructure used to deal with some of the combined sewer overflow and sanitary sewer overflows. In particular, cities like Cincinnati and New York have been very, very aggressive with these. This image shows one of the 19 new bioswales installed by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. They estimate that these bioswales are going to reduce their combined sewer overflow by 1 million gallons. And they're part of New York's Green Infrastructure Plan, which will cost an estimated $2.4 billion. Cincinnati's doing some really innovative things as well. They're actually partnered with the zoo, and the zoo has a new outdoor feature where they really built some stormwater storage features underground so that they're able to reuse the water to help with both the landscaping and watering of the animals. Los Angeles Board of Works assembled an interdepartmental team called Green Streets Committee, and the goal was to increase stormwater infiltration in order to improve water quality and simultaneously enhance groundwater recharge, a really critical issue in that Southern California area. So by focusing on LA streets and sidewalks, the committee generated ideas that evolved into low-impact development pilot projects, and then eventually into the city's recently passed ordinances, which calls for low-impact development in all new commercial construction and redevelopment. Pretty aggressive program. Even single-family residents larger than 500 square feet will include new components for capturing stormwater. So the city's pilot projects were key in rallying support from stakeholders. So it includes 3 residential retrofits with low-impact development, such as bioswales, rain barrels, pervious pavement, drought-tolerant landscaping, and again, it exemplifies a lot of the low-impact kind of development that is ongoing. What is really exciting to folks in the business like us that are dealing with this is the research. There's a lot of research that's now going on, because that was always the issue, especially when we were dealing with the regulators, was, will it work? How can you prove to me that this is going to be effective and it'll work? And the science or the technology has been so new, there really hasn't been enough examples to say, you know, here's the metric that I wanted and here were the results of that. So exciting that our sister organization, the Water Environment Research Foundation, has a lot of research going on, but a lot of universities as well are involved in this. Pilot's from the New Hampshire University of New Hampshire Stormwater Center that are looking at these issues as well. The Water Environment Federation, you know, is part of like our WEFTEC and the other things that we do. We are now moving more aggressively into stormwater education. We are launching a new international stormwater magazine that will again talk a lot about not only the regulations, but the science, the technology, the metrics, the things that are working that people can be involved in. We have been involved in many meetings with US EPA. We've been involved at 2 meetings at the White House, the Council on Environmental Quality, that are very, very excited about the green initiatives and a way to really have a greater impact on dealing with these water quality issues. No question that the natural disasters, not only here, but unfortunately more so around our country, are causing a tremendous amount of problems. So stormwater is an issue for us like never before, and one that we simply must come to grips with and we must find a way to deal with. I thought this was really interesting out of Prince George's, just in Washington, D.C. Going green could mean creating new jobs, and that's exciting, especially in this economy that now is slowly recovering, is the opportunity that we can create from jobs as well. And I've got some copies of this if anybody, there's just a ton of information. I mean, here's a really neat video in West Virginia that encourages agricultural conservation practices, which again, we all know that is very, very important. Rain Garden for the Bays, Delaware Estuary and Pennsylvania. READY program for youth, providing green jobs to young adults. Again, a way to create some employment for them, but really to start their education about that. Video about the stormwater treatment devices along the Indianapolis Cultural Trail. Really impressive area if you're ever in downtown Indianapolis. It's kind of hidden away, but it's worth really trying to find out about that. There's all kind of great videos up there, and I'll have this in case anybody wants to. I know I went through that quickly. I wanted to try to give you, again, some of my personal perspective and background and experience, and again, highlight, hopefully, Marco, some of the things that you've talked about, and I know that on the website there has been a lot of this really good information. So as I could ask our panel that's here, if they could kind of come forward and have a seat, Marcia and David, Deputy Mayor, come on up here. And I'm going to start as they're kind of getting ready with that. to ask you a question. If you had a magic wand, what would be your vision for the city of New Orleans in dealing with urban stormwater? I have some friends out there that I'll call on, like Elisa. Lisa Speranza, president of CH2M Hill, who calls this place home. And seriously, Elisa, maybe if you wouldn't mind, we have a microphone that we could get over to? Lisa. And while the folks are getting, so, you know, you live here, you've been all around the country, you're doing a lot of this kind of work. Okay, this is your home. What's the magic wand of what you would like to see happen?
I owe you now, Jeff. Thank you. Singling me out. Magic wand, I would like to see green infrastructure in New Orleans as an integral part of a portfolio of management approaches that the city has to take. It's a very complicated city and a very complicated stormwater challenge that exists here. I would love to see that be an engine of an economic development for the city.
Great. And I'm going to turn to Marcia now, if I can, Marcia. And she really has a tremendous national reputation for you all. You should be very proud of your leader for your Water and Sewer Board here in New Orleans. Is well known around the country, is well regarded for her excellent leadership and management in this area. What do you think are the key components that New Orleans has in place to really be able to move forward with an effective program, Marcia?
You know, as we look to how we develop the city in eastern New Orleans, we developed the city in eastern New Orleans with a lot of water retention basins. We have 9 lakes and man-made lakes in which, if we look at the pumping capacity of the city of New Orleans, west of the Industrial Canal, we have 3 times the quantity of pumping west of the Industrial Canal than we have east of the Industrial Canal. And that's because we have so many natural retention basins. If we look at Lake Vista, Lake Vista was built in the 1950s as part of WPA, built around a lot of open structures, open space where water is retained. I think one of the largest assets for this community is the fact that as we look around this room, people are beginning to accept that water is worth it and there's a value to water. Water is worth it is just a wonderful slogan for the Water Environment Federation. But 15 years ago, we would not have this conversation. And while we all are still suffering from the impacts of Hurricane Katrina, that has set the basis in which this community is now appreciates the value of water. That's something that shouldn't be hidden, but something that we live with, and something we enjoy, something we value, and something that we protect to protect our infrastructure. And I think we have a lot of those things in place today.
So is there anyone in here that does not make their living directly in the water industry? Raise your hand if you do not make a living directly in the water industry. Okay, all right. So Jim, you were the first hand that came up, all right?
Yes.
What do you think are the opportunities here?
Well, I'm sorry, I just walked in. I'm a lawyer, and I was busy at the office. Options? I don't know. I need to hear some more discussion.
All right. So how many have been to 3 of these sessions? Raise your hand. Okay. What, sir, if I can call on you right here. So you've been to 3 or more. What's really made an impression on you of what you've heard?
It's just a component of ideas from outside the region, things that we had never thought about, maybe we can make them modify to our region. I'm here actually representing St. Bernard, but I'm also an elected official in St. Tammany where we have a terrible TMDL issue. So I'm kind of wearing 2 hats and taking ideas back and it's helped tremendously.
TMDL is total maximum daily load for those of you that don't work in the water industry.
That's exactly what
We're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and it really is a factor that's caused by either sewer overflows, ag runoff, or stormwater runoff that has things that we don't in the water, too many things in the water that we want in the water, and so we're being kind of mandated by EPA to do that. Council Member Cantrell, maybe we can talk about.
That's not her.
Oh, it's not her.
I'm representing her. I'm her chief of staff. My name is Marilyn Wood. She asked me to sit in about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. We'll talk about putting people on the spot. But the chiefs of staff, they're the people that really know what's going on.
I'm the councilwoman.
Yeah.
So I can try to answer your question, but what was it again?
What do you think are the opportunities that New Orleans has to try to really move forward in addressing some of the stormwater issues?
Well, I think there are lots of opportunities in terms of capturing the water and putting it back into the water table through some, for example, one of the things our office is interested in rather belatedly is that they're doing a big Army Corps engineer project on Napoleon Avenue in our district. And we're asking them to add some stormwater retention through surface water kind of enhancements for that pervious pavement with a walking path and a rain garden along the sides of the walking path and so forth. And those things are unlikely given that the project is so far along, but we want to start that conversation because that's the kind of thinking that needs to be done.
Right. Do we have any educators here? I'm not going to call on you again. Okay, so you heard me talk about our education program, and so what do you think are the opportunities in our school systems that we can start to inform and educate our kids more?
Well, I think the project, well, this is not working, but I do have a principal's voice, so I think most people can hear me. Anytime you want to change thinking, the best way to do it is to instruct children. They have a great deal of leeway, and they can influence their parents and change how they think. I know in the early 70s and 80s, we did it with energy efficiency. And we taught the kids at McDonough 15 how to turn off the lights when they went out the classroom, and classes got stars for how much energy they saved. So I think the same is basically the problem you were talking about. You can't have water to the point that they could really observe what's going on, but you can do field trips, and you can do lesson plans that talk about water conservation. And David and I went to the Netherlands, and what we found out there was that they embrace the water. And believe it, they have the North Sea, so they have to embrace a lot more than we have to. But I think that they have pledged that the water is part of their environment, and because it is part of their environment, they go to great lengths to work out, and they have the wonderful Delft that we went to institute. So education is where you should start if you want to change the mindset.
So, Mr. Abear, you're involved in redevelopment, right? And so maybe that question I asked first. So, if you had a magic wand, you know, you're in the redevelopment area. Where would you like to see New Orleans in 5 or 10 years in terms of dealing with urban stormwater?
Well, it's not really even a magic wand. It's actually, you know, something that we think about all the time because we have the responsibility for so many vacant lots in the city. And thinking through in the right context how we could use some of those vacant lots to retain, detain, and you know, mitigate some of the flooding that we have in our neighborhoods, but also for best management practices on what we should be doing anyway that we see around the country. Some of the examples that were shown on the screen are things that we're investigating. Deputy Mayor Grant and I have talked about this before, David Wagner and I, Marcia St. Martin. You know, these are things that we know we should be doing. And I think now is about the right time to really start thinking about implementation of some of the ideas that have come up. And we have, a lot of people think it's a horrible thing to think that you have thousands of properties, but for us, we see it as an opportunity to really do some innovative things in New Orleans with something that can be more of an attraction in the neighborhood than a detraction from the neighborhood.
All right. Deputy Mayor Grant, you know, that's one challenge, the vacant lots. What are the other challenges that you see in trying to have a really strong integrated urban water plan?
Well, Marcia hit on it very well, and I think it's good that we're having this conversation, but it's a conversation we didn't have before that we absolutely need to have now. And let me frame it for you. One, we can't build our way out of the problem that we have. To add another inch of drainage in the city of New Orleans is a number you don't even want to hear. Okay, so we have to deal with what we have. And the best way to deal with it is the way we used to deal with it. Okay, remember the Netherlands came to us initially to find out about how to do this. And what we used to do is rain gardens, all of the things that have been talked about here, and we got away from it. because we had another problem that we wanted to resolve, which was that we had malaria and yellow fever infestations, and we wanted to close and all of those things. So we've got a set of unique challenges. We can do it, but we've got to manage it because we have other challenges. Green roofs. Green roofs really don't work here because the more stuff is wet, the more it rots, the more. So we have to come up with another answer to the same problem that the Netherlands and others have. And also, there is no deferral of cost. Okay? It's maybe an order of magnitude, but we're just talking about building it differently. It still costs money. And quite honestly, we're about to really embark on a series of strategies here that we're hoping will mitigate what things could cost. But there's no question that there will still be those costs associated with it. And if we all commit, and again, this is commitment at the same level that we commit to everything else in this community. If we commit to it, we can accomplish it because what I've learned in this is folks, we've been doing it. We've been doing it for a long time, and we're doing it now. We're doing it so fast, we don't have time to write it down. Okay? We're way ahead of where a lot of the places in the world are. And once we get it all aggregated and we all come to the same common direction, there's no doubt that we can accomplish this because we have and we know how to do it.
Any reactions from you? What are the obstacles that are keeping you all from moving forward, or if you want to take off on the opportunities? Thoughts from any of you? Yes.
This mic is working now.
Yeah, over here.
Hello? Hello?
I like the magic wand question. I'd like to see a value shift where it's prioritized. And our leaders, we are elegant, we are doing a lot of things, but when we really prioritize so that it is how we do things and then we make it happen. And that's where reconnecting with water, implementing the water management strategy, I think if a magic wand would be that we're able to do that, we're able to live with water. And then carrot and stick that we heard about so much through this session, then we can be the leaders that we really should be. That water is an asset, creating a whole economy on how we can better live with water. This is our opportunity. We are really blessed. So a value shift where our leaders really make water, and how to reconnect with our systems a priority. That would be fabulous.
Right. David, would you like to take off on that?
Not that.
Okay.
Well, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'd like
Mr. Grant, I mean, I give it close.
Again, I'm going to have a vote for whatever I come up with, so I'm going to let it go first.
Okay. Everything that we talked about during this series has a dollar sign associated with it. After Katrina, and this is something we can't just push aside. So I wish, like you do, that we had this wand that we could wipe away all the problems we have now. But we have a very aged infrastructure, and I figure that's where you're going. And we have severe problems because of that aged infrastructure that actually most people don't really want to put or wrap their minds around. And Marcia is sitting over there, and she can tell you about it. We're about 2 steps away from a major crisis because to repair our system would cost, what, Marcia?
Which number you want? 9 or 11 billion?
I want the best number you can give me.
$11 billion.
$11 billion. Now, I was here after Katrina, and I can tell you, one of the things we did, we took numerous trips, David was with me, and we went to talk to the EPA and everybody we could think of to try to get them to give us some money to start that process. And it has been deferred for lack of funding. So I think that that's the critical issue. If we could get to the point that we could get our infrastructure together. And what a lot of people don't realize, we don't just furnish water to New Orleans. We furnish water to Jefferson. We furnish water all the way up the river to who? Plaquemines. Where?
A little bit to St. Charles.
St. Charles?
Plaquemines Parish, St. Bernard Parish, Jefferson Parish.
So when you talk about repairing infrastructure, it's not critical just to New Orleans. It is a regional issue. But that being said, the one thing David and I learned by going to the Netherlands is that there are small projects that you can start with. And the project that we've been thinking about is, if you know anything about the history of Pontchartrain Park and Gentilly Woods and going back to segregation, there was a canal, a ditch or whatever, put between the two to segregate them. The communities have come together, and one of the projects that we are very excited about moving forward, and we're trying to get funding for, is to take that ditch that had such a negative connotation and make it into a drainage, water park, excess water, and it would be phenomenal, because you would take a negative and make it into a positive, but then it would be a project that would show what could be done in neighborhoods. And I think that, you know, Cedric brought it up. We have some issues because of our subtropical climate that doesn't exist in some of the cities that we've talked about. That does not mean we can't do it. It just means we have to be innovative enough to think about, given that this is our problem, what do we have to do? I mean, I tell people all the time, if the Dutch can handle the North Sea, we ought to be able to handle Pontchartrain and the river. Because I looked at it, and that was an awesome thing to have to control. But the other thing is that we had things in place, and we threw them away. And that is so the lesson of New Orleans. I have areas of my district that still have not been connected to the drainage system. So they have drainage ditches, and it still works on gravity. Thank you, I was looking for the word. So it's there. It's about taking people who are interested and really seeing those areas, those neighborhoods, those projects, and saying, okay, let's take that and start. We got to start somewhere. So let's take these few projects, start with it, and then show how successful they can be. It's the same thing we did with the housing. People knew that we were supposed to build up. But then in the 40s and 50s, we thought, oh, well, in California, they build slabs. Well, slabs should never have worked here, but we went ahead and did it. And now what are we doing? We're going back to what the history of this city knows. We elevate the houses and we live with the water. So that's what I see.
Deputy Mayor, I think, but and let me, I'll be looking at here if you, get my attention, I'll call on you. Do you want to make a point now? And
Yeah, I think it's important to think back of the history of New Orleans, because we have always been dealing with water to keep ourselves from flooding. That's not the case in most cities in the United States, to be used to spending money to deal with stormwater. We've been dealing with it in a way that maybe is not the best way we want to move, but at least the people in New Orleans are used to spending money to deal with stormwater. And so it's just the educational step to recognize a different way to do that than we've been doing it recently. But in terms of knowing we got to pay to keep from flooding, I think New Orleans is already there. So I think that's a big advantage.
Again, Pat, thank you for coming. It is about priorities, and here's the priority that's really we're facing. We're about to get to the point where we have done all we can do with the dollars that were given to us on recovery, and we will probably, when we're done, touch about 20% of what needs to happen. So then it's us. Okay, then it's us. What are we going to do? Everything that we've talked about here is doable. It all has costs associated with it. Let's hope that it's kind of related to lesser cost than it would be to build hard infrastructure. But the truth of the matter is, it's kind of, I'll give you a good example. We have an application that we have tested for permeable streets. You can actually drive on them right now, okay, in the lower ninth ward. We on the cutting edge of that. It's 15% more than the cost of a regular street, but it drains real well because it's now got limestone instead of hard surface under it, instead of subsurface drainage. The councilman talked about ditches that are not connected. Yes, they are. But the point is, that's a bioswale.
Right.
Okay, we want some more of that, okay, and not some more pipe. Okay, so we can move to this, and we can move to this in a very informed and thoughtful way. But let me tell you about the real big opportunity that's going to be coming up. The real big opportunity is that if we're all committed, and again, here's where we have to build consensus. We're in the middle of a revision of our comprehensive zoning ordinance right now. Something cities don't do but once every millennium. And we're doing this now, first time in 30 years. We've got a stormwater management strategy we want to propose in it that suggests how people manage water on their own property. What do you want to bet when it comes to the city council? Somebody might be against it.
Not me.
No, I'm not talking about council. I'm talking about advocates. I'm talking about advocacy. Okay, if we really want to make the leap, there's where the leap is in regulation that allows you to do all the things that Jeff told you that they were doing. We can regulate that, and that's a majority of the city council mayor signs the ordinance. But I can assure you the development community is going to be a little reticent. There's going to be, I want simple stuff to come out of that. Okay, you want to mitigate stormwater? Put a pond in your backyard. Make your sidewalk permeable. And maybe your cost of drainage eventually will not be as significant. Okay? You've got
But the upfront cost is what? The upfront cost is the hard sell.
Yes.
Right. You have to understand that. Every time we propose a change that, like Cedric is talking about, that has to be sold to the public because it's going to wind up having to go for public vote. I don't know about, and I'm going to speak for myself, but I know that Councilwoman Cantrell is also very receptive to what your district wants, what your neighborhoods want. And so what I try to do is I try to do a lot of education so that I feel when the community makes a decision, they've got both sides. And Jeff and I have worked real close because my district was 80% underwater. 80%. And I'm not talking about 5 and 6 inches. I'm talking about 5, 10, 20 feet. So we were under a lot of water. Whole developments got wiped out. But we're back. And the reason we're back is because of neighborhood consensus. Neighborhoods coming together and saying, we are going to rebuild. People stepping forward and making the decision, I'm going to build a more energy efficient home. I can tell you, 85% of the houses that were built back in my district are energy efficient. And I'm bragging, I am. But what I learned on that one trip to the Netherlands was that we hadn't even touched a myriad of possibilities for the city. We are surrounded by water and that we don't know how to live with it, and we try to build these barriers. When you're in the Netherlands, the streets are level and the water is draining into these little workable canals. That's a plus and a minus because of our location. But I'm on the mosquito control board, and I can tell you, we've got one of the best in the world, not the country, the world. People come from all over the world to see how we do it because it's such a problem in other countries. So it's doable. But there has to be advocates. There have to be people that are willing to be what I could call the people that step out first.
And I'll just like to add to that, the council member, really quickly, is what starts the advocacy and gets a lot more people more comfortable with these ideas is if they start to see pilot projects, which is what we were talking about earlier. And I think that is something, once you can see it, taste it, feel it, for people who are skeptical or don't understand it, then you start to see the benefit and you actually start to see the built product, and it makes it easier to advocate for it.
Which is what we experienced at SD1 when we did it on our site, right?
How many of you are familiar with Energy Smart, the program? See, that's all about education. So if we took the same thing that we did with our energy, with Energy Smart, and we do it with water, through pilot programs that educate, then when we say, how many of you are familiar with things we can do for water, then all your hands could go up. And then you would have the commitment from the community.
Okay, we'll get this young lady here, and then I'll get you, sir.
Hi, so I'm very familiar with the water system in New Orleans. I was a water Environment Federation Water Leadership Institute Fellow last year.
Excellent.
I'm a water quality specialist, and I do education with thousands of kids each year, all across the state of Louisiana. And in 2010, my organization created a green infrastructure guidance document for Orleans and Jefferson Parish. And when we unveiled that in 2010, many of these people, I love you all, in this room said this will never work here. Never. And so I'm super excited to hear the changes. And I think what I would ask is that as we move forward, we start thinking about combining some of our management for water quality and water quantity. We have an opportunity to combine our management of our MS4 program and our community rating system program. I live in a slab-on-grade house a few blocks from the mayor, and it's flooded 7 times in the last 10 years. I know better, but I can't afford better. And I think it's really important that we all sort of step up. So I do things on my lot to manage water. I have a downspout planter. But I think it's incredibly important that if we're going to all value water and we're going to go talk to kids, that we are creating a comprehensive educational program for the city of New Orleans so that we're all saying it. And we're saying it in many different avenues and many different ways. Because for a very long time, I felt like I've been yelling on deaf ears, and I'm so happy about this. I've been really giddy the whole time. But I mean, I think it's time to move forward and create those pilot projects, as well as that voice and that vision of how we value water. Water is our biggest asset here, so we really need to make it so.
Thank you. Good. If we get the microphone over here, and while we're doing that, let me let Marcia, maybe for those that, because we did have a number of non-water folks in here, this concept of water quality and water quantity, and maybe talk a moment about that, Dan.
Now?
Yeah, if you don't mind, and then I'll get you on that.
The Surgeon Water Board has an exhibit outside of this room. It's called the Wetlands Assimilation Project. And the Wetlands Assimilation Project is a project, when we talk about water quality, Surgeon Water Board manages 3 water systems: drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And water is all integrated. It's one water. So this Wetlands Assimilation Project is going to take treated wastewater, as opposed to treating it and moving it into the Mississippi River. We're going to redirect it to the wetlands in the Central Wetlands Unit near Bayou Bienvenue. It's a joint project between Orleans and St. Bernard Parish. The benefits is that we will take a waste product, we're going to make it a beneficial use product. We will take fresh water, which is treated wastewater, and feed the wetlands. We're working with the academic community to develop wetlands plants, native wetlands plants that will be planted into this wetlands probably late fall, early spring. We also, as we've aged, we're taking a lot of personal care products and pharmaceuticals. So we're experimenting with a process called ferrate, in which we may be on a cutting edge with some of the work we're doing with Tulane University in being able to treat, and this is a water quality issue, to be able to treat water from the types of things with personal care products and pharmaceuticals that we're beginning to experience as we age as a nation. So this one project will be a beneficial reuse project. It will improve water quality as part of our MS4 permit. A protected wetland is going to stop a storm surge, because part of what destroyed the waste treatment plant with about 18 feet of water was a storm surge coming through St. Bernard Parish Bayou Bienvenue. So we'll have this constructed wetland, and probably will be fully grown in about maybe 6 years. That's going to protect the levees, help improve water quality, help reduce the cost of wastewater treatment, because every drop of water we can keep out of the wastewater system and keep it in the stormwater system reduces the cost of wastewater. So if you have an opportunity to visit Ann's in the room. Ann's the head of our Environmental Affairs Department. Ann has wonderful brochures and photographs of this demonstration project. And we talk about how we've evolved. The Surgeon Water Board introduced this concept in 1998. And we met with significant opposition from the environmental community and the citizens of the area. Katrina, when we could prove the nexus between a storm surge and wetlands, this project took legs. We received funding from CIAP, from the regional authority, and we are actually building this project. And you can look at Google Earth, and you'll see the 2 cells that's been constructed. So there is a demonstration, it's successful, and I think we're on the verge of doing more and looking at water holistically. Not just stormwater, drinking water, and wastewater, but one water system, a holistic approach to water management.
So, are there any tweeters in here? 1, 2, tweet. So how many folks use Twitter? Raise your hand if you use Twitter. No, that's okay. How many Facebook? Okay, well, most of you are just trying to find out what your kids are doing, right? That's why you're on Facebook. A very powerful tool that is really underutilized in the water industry, and we've got to get with it. And it's information like this that you should be tweeting about, you should be posting on LinkedIn and Facebook, so that you're spreading the word on those good things that are trying to happen, so that we can continue to get the kind of support to move these things forward. Sir.
Yeah, I was in Seattle 2 weekends ago on vacation, and I just happened to go to the local grocery store. I think the name of it was PCC. You pull into the grocery store, and instead of 2 parking spots, there's a rain garden with a huge sign in front of it that explains why the rain garden's there, also explaining why they have a huge cistern in the back of the store to collect all the rainwater off of there. Unbelievable. I mean, you just had to stop and be very impressed. And I was wondering if anyone could explain how the city's negotiations went with Costco. I couldn't help but noticing it's going to be finished and it's going to be very huge. And I was wondering, talking about funding.
No, but therein lies exactly what I was talking about. The Costco issue related more to not having the regulations available to deal with. And where we're moving to is we're about to suggest in this comprehensive zoning ordinance regulations that would allow for those very things. The point is, the developer's always going to go to the least common denominator. So when we propose it, we're going to need the advocacy behind it that suggests that's what we want to do as a community. Okay, so look, we've got much more development. We're the fastest growing place in America, so there's much more development to come and many more opportunities to deal with that. And I would suggest to you that as we come out of this with these regulations, just as some of the strategies that have been proposed here, which quite honestly are baby steps in relation to what we need to do, we can move as fast as the community wants to move, but they've got to move collectively because we've got to have a consensus that that's where we want to be. We don't want to be pushing the water down the canal again.
So let's get a microphone back here. I think we've got 3 hands up. And of course, I'm not familiar with the land use and the zoning regulations here, but in most communities, the zoning regulations don't allow for that to happen because you have to have so many parking spaces at peak times. I mean, how many times you drive by a parking lot and it's empty, except on the holidays, at Christmas time. Well, most zoning regulations are, that you have to have for that peak traffic flow. But in the meantime, we got all that impervious area that is not doing any good, and it's these outdated planning, zoning regulations. But most developers would rather not do that. Most developers today would rather try to do the types of things that you're talking about. But we've got to have the right ordinances in place to be able to support that. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to build on what Ms. St. Martin was saying, that there's a pilot project right there that's working already, but there are a lot of them in the city and in the region that are already working. And I've been working over the last month with my staff, with other landscape architecture firms. We're putting together, primarily for the council, a compendium of those projects, where they are, what they do, and they all combine, Jen, water quality and flood control. They're both. But there's things in City Park, Meg. There's things at Dillard University. There's things at commercial establishments. There's something out here. There's something at a library over by Fontainebleau and Broad. I mean, there are things all over the city and a little bit Jefferson Parish, some stuff on the West Bank, some stuff on the North Shore, and other parts of the South. There are tons of pilot projects that individuals, developers, whatever, have done already. Now, the big one is going to be the Pontchartrain Park, Gentilly Woods. That's going to be so awesome. I'll start getting excited, and then my voice will go up. But So there's a lot of that, and that compendium will be available very soon. We're just QCing it, and so that could be a resource for people to just go look at things already working. They work. Some of them have been in place for years.
Great. So pass the mic over here, whoever they have the phone on. And Marco, that comment makes me think you guys are doing a great job of populating the website with a lot of this material. And as you go into phase 2, continuing to highlight the pilot projects that you have here might be a really important next step so that folks can understand that there is some progress being made. Okay, where'd the mic? Yes.
Forgive me if this has already been done, but I'd like to just take a second right now, and if we could all give a round of applause for the Greater New Orleans Foundation for bringing people in the room who are talking about these very important issues, and I think are building true consensus, more so than I've seen since I've been here in New Orleans for the past 6 years. So I'd just like to give you all a round of applause. The second thing I'd like to say is thank you to the city council members and the staff and the business leaders up on stage there for actually being the ones that take that step forward and take a step out. Give me a council member who runs a campaign on long-term thinking. Give me a council member who's not just thinking about their next term, the next 4 years, but runs their campaign and says, voters, I'm thinking about your future. I'm thinking about your children's future. And that's what's going to prevent another Katrina. And that's what's going to prevent another disaster. And that's what's going to make us a leading city, a model city for the rest of our country. And please give me that campaign, because that's who I want to vote for. Third thing is really our community, right? Give me a community that really truly collaborates. It sees our community as the bigger picture, that isn't just thinking about themselves, because if we are thinking about ourselves, we have to be thinking about each other. We have to be thinking about our environment. I just think it's amazing that we can do that it is possible. Energy Smart has been done. We've done made incredible steps forward. We have a new energy efficiency ruling in our state where we're going to create jobs and save a ton of money and save a ton of energy because we came together as a community and collaborated. And I'm so excited for that potential and for us to be an innovative city. I think our city is innovative, but let's innovate not just in our technology and not just in our sciences, but in our collaboration. And let's show how that can be really done. And I know the Sustainable Industries Committee of New Orleans has our first 5-year economic development plan. That's really exciting. First time we have a plan, let's try to really make those policy recommendations in that economic development plan, have these regulations in it. And I know there's a Sustainable Industries Committee. I welcome any of you to come and support that committee. My name's Liz. I work for Life City. We are a business here that helps every business currently break the law and use those storm drains and water retention features. But we are excited to help the business community and consumers get access to these green solutions. And I really just want to thank everyone for being a part of this discussion. Let's just keep it going.
So as the microphone is coming over here, let me ask those of you in the room that are not elected officials or you don't work for the Water and Sewer Board, okay, kind of citizens, how many of you have been to a city council meeting in the last 6 months? Okay, good, right? So, I lived in a community that towards the end of the time that I was there had the wrong kind of people showing up to tell these folks what not to do. And we are witnessing all around this country that we have the wrong kind of folks showing up telling these folks what not to do. It's pretty impressive that you've got people that are willing to step up and do the right thing. But you've got to be there to support them. It's not just a matter of electing them and say, go do your job, because there are other people that are showing up telling them what not to do. And if you really want to make a difference in this community and you have folks that are willing to say it and put it on the line, you got to show up. And you've got to be there and speak in favor of these things so that they and their peers have the support to get those things done. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jody Manali with Keller Williams Realty, and I just wanted to bring up something sort of practical to me about a practical opportunity I think we have, which is that FEMA has proposed changing our flood maps around here recently. And that's going to result in some savings on flood insurance for some people, and it will result in an increase for others. I think if we could tie that to some of these projects, when you're talking about help people to see, this is focused more toward the adults. These are things we're hearing in the home buying industry. Homeowners and home buyers are concerned about these changes coming down the pipe with flood insurance. And we know that areas are going to be rezoned and up to an X zone, which is where they're not required to even buy flood insurance because of some major projects done by the Army Corps of Engineers since Katrina, the levees, some additional pumps, and so on. I don't know if there's any way that we could take a lot of smaller projects, add the results together, and have FEMA put that into their formula for some extra consideration for zoning. But if not, I think it's really important for the average citizen and the average resident, if we can really reinforce right now, it's timing, it's an issue of timing. If we can reinforce right now that savings are coming down the road here in the next year, and they're coming directly from having made these improvements. Let us continue in that direction, making these improvements, which will reduce our flood risk, which could potentially further reduce our flood insurance, and that is something that will all save in the long term.
Let me tackle that one. As part of the community rating process, all of the construction projects on the drainage system is under consideration. The Corps of Engineers projects, any improvements that are made by the Surgeon Water Board, not just the Surgeon Water Board, but the region. And the work that Senator Landrieu, Senator Vitter, and all the elected officials, I think we've got a coalition of maybe like 30 elected officials around this region, are armed with that very specific facts, project by project, no matter how small or how large the project is. And one of the things that FEMA looked at was to make the assumption that only 50% of the drainage system would work during a major event. Well, we demonstrate that throughout the region, and we've got to think about water, not just Orleans Parish, but holistically the entire region. That's not the case. That's not the practical case. So our elected officials are on with all that information that has already been used as part of the community rating experience, but to be part of the FEMA flood map decisions. So yes, that's happening.
Good afternoon. My name is Marissa Escudero, and I'm here to represent the Land Trust for Southeast Louisiana. And I just want to piggyback on every idea that's been given so far. The idea of instructing children, I think, is very key, but I'm still waiting to hear the great word that I like is conservation. And Jeff, you brought up that, I think it was in Milwaukee, that they were using conservation easements with riparian owners to go ahead and encourage water quality that way. And I just wanted to remind everyone that conservation is something that we can do, and it's a very easy step for us, something that we can overlay on top of all sorts of projects, and just a reminder of that.
Great. Yes, sir. Now Jim's ready.
Jim Babs, I'm a lawyer here in town. David's an old friend. You mentioned both FEMA and the Corps. How much of what we need to do will FEMA release its money for, and how much will the Corps let us do? How much say do they have? I'm perfectly happy to go visit my friends on the city council sitting here and the rest of them, but do we also have to deal with the Corps and with FEMA?
Well, I'll try. I mean, the truth, I mean, the Corps has delivered what they promised. And it has, as the lady suggested, it has delivered a significant benefit in relation to what people are seeing inside the flood protection. I mean, we really have this thing of what's in the flood protection and what's out, okay? The FEMA has suggested a strategy based on that of where your base flood elevation is and what your rating would be. As I have come to understand, in most of New Orleans, that's a pretty good, very positive thing right now. There are going to be some places that it's more, and there are some places that it's going to be less, but nowhere near the things that are happening in some of the other parishes that, in extreme cases that are happening, basically outside the flood protection. So I would say to you that maybe the real strategy is more, because again, all they're doing is setting a baseline. Okay, what we're trying to do is continue to mitigate that by continuing improvements, it should suggest, because again, on an annual basis, they're gonna send you your flood insurance policy. Okay? So what you want to do is make sure that you're doing more, so it's
I may not
reduced.
express myself well.
Yeah.
The Corps is also involved on my street. I live on the Bodie, where the Big Dig is going on right now. Okay, I'm sorry, I live on the Big Dig. I've been with it for almost a year now. I've got 3.5 years to go, I think, okay? Is that all Corps? Is that Corps and Sewerage and Water Board? Is it Corps in the city? Who's dictating how that thing is going to be done? Who's going to control whether we have a berm like this that makes no sense, or like this? It would seem to me like this is less dirt, costs less money, and even if it's already been designed this way, this is cheaper, huh? Who's going to dictate that?
The partner for the dig is the Sewage and Water Board, and the citizens of New Orleans that's spending 35% of the cost of that project. If you think about Napoleon Avenue, we're building a second canal. So you have to have the second canal very parallel to the first canal. It's designed in such a fashion that we won't be able to create a large bioswale. But the Corps has committed, and one of the questions I was asking on this first meetings, the Sewage and Water Board needs to ask the question, and we've asked the question. The Corps has committed to reinstalling the green space using water quality and water management strategies. Okay. Now, will it be a very large dip? We don't know. Will it be a walking path? Possibly. Will it have rain gardens adjacent to it? But the Sewage and Water Board, and working with Deputy Mayor Grant, we have pushed the Corps that the restoration of Claiborne, Napoleon, Jefferson Avenue, we're doing a project along Dwyer as well as Florida, that those projects, when we restore the top surface, which is the medium and the neutral ground, that water management strategies be incorporated, and not only strategies of water management, but ways in which the community can enjoy that green space as an exercise space and a space for relaxation. So we've got that commitment.
I'm going to invite the panels to kind of make one last comment as we're wrapping up here, but I want to get a little more input from you all. Who or what organization is not here that needs to be here? Who are we missing? Yes, sir.
Is the Corps here? Are the waterway users here? Is the Corps here? I would like to know that. If I may just say this, you know, the port has control of all the high ground around us, you know, where they have their facilities. And as far as I can tell, they need to be part of the conversation, because most of that land is impervious, and the water comes down whenever they build more water comes into our city. So they have to be part of that conversation. The Corps also needs to be part of it, because when we have an emergency and we can't handle it, and the lower Ninth Ward floods because there's too much rain from a big storm and everything's closed off, we need to be able to push that water out somehow into the river as an emergency. There are a lot of considerations, but they need to be at the table about this. Thank you.
Port. Yeah. Port. Yeah. Who else? Who else are we missing? Who needs to be here? Who needs to be involved that's not?
Are there any state representatives here today?
Okay. State legislators? Okay. What's the thought over here?
Nord Playgrounds. Nord Playgrounds.
Okay.
Cedric's here,
Oh.
he's the deputy mayor.
They're here. Okay. Yes, sir. What's that? The mayor?
We have a deputy mayor,
Deputy mayor's here, but okay. Okay. Who else? Who's missing? Who needs to be involved?
the one that's over, Mr. Grant is the deputy mayor over capital projects. He's the one that needs to be here, because he's the one that handles all that. He's the one that we beat on when it isn't done right.
Other parishes.
Well, we have a gentleman here from St. Tammany and St.
Yep.
You know,
Okay.
St.
Yeah. Who else? Who else?
Landowners.
DEQ. Somebody said landowners.
Developers.
Developers? Lady, I think, recognize herself as a realtor, right?
Lenders.
Any bankers here? Contractors?
Any engineers here?
School board?
More neighborhood leaders.
More neighborhood leaders? Write faster than you can write, Liz, but it's being videotaped, remember that. This is just a brain dump, but I think it's important for you to think about. Are there key constituents not here that need to be here to help us buy into all the things we're doing?
You need a bigger, I mean, you need like we did when we did the United Plan right after Katrina. We had to use a convention center.
Yeah.
Because I think the big piece that's missing is the community leadership. Because that's where it starts, that's where the support is, but if you don't educate them, they could be your biggest advocates if they knew what you knew. And that's why the Energy Smart program is so widely hailed around the country, because we're the only one that's been successful with it, where they've tried it in other areas. And I think why we were successful is because we knew how to get it to the populace because of what we learned from Katrina. How to work with neighborhood organizations, how to get the information out. And I think that's the key to what you have the knowledge, but we've got to get it down to the grassroots level so that the neighborhood organizations don't feel like we're coming in and they're going to worry about mosquitoes.
Arts and culture.
Yes. Arts and culture.
May I comment on the neighborhood?
Sure.
First, let me apologize for coming late. I'm not late because you weren't important. I'm here because you're very important. I was co-chairing a criminal justice budget meeting that ended 5 minutes before I arrived here. And that's where other council members were that wanted to be here too. So we're sorry that ran long, but rightfully so, it was a very good meeting. Neighborhood leaders led us back after Katrina. We were both at ground zero for Katrina. I stayed there because fortunately I didn't lose my home. And we continued on to be a part of the beginning of the revival, and Miss Morell and I, and have lived on since then, obviously, and, have lived to watch a real renaissance take place under this administration. But we watched neighborhood leaders take the lead on the recovery of this city. They were followed by faith-based, they were followed by nonprofits. Government was fourth in line. As government, I'm telling you what I can say that, and we know it's the truth. But at least we had the good sense to get in line, okay? That's the good news. And, and follow the right leaders, okay? So if you want something like this done, and I have more to say, but I'll wait till it's my turn. I had to talk about this, though. If you want something done, you always have your good neighborhood. You have your neighborhood associations here. We have put when we did the city's master plan, and I was so proud to author, that was one of a kind for a 300-year-old city. They got a national award. We took the lead with neighborhood leaders to make sure we got the right kind of zoning that not only protected neighborhoods, but it also considered some water management, thanks to Mr. David Wagoner, but it also did invite business. You can peacefully coexist with all of these things. But we were smart enough to put in neighborhood participation plans we have it in our NORD programs, we have it in our administration, and we have it in our master plan, and they all work very well together. So yes, we have been at this table, and we're doing it tremendously, and especially bringing back NORD through neighborhood leaders. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jeff Stupak. Great. My name is Jeff Stupak from Global Green. I kind of see some similarities in this, actually, and I kind of want to just second what y'all have said, which is really great, in that when Global Green, for instance, came to New Orleans a long time ago, green building was the hot topic, and people were talking about it, but a lot of homeowners didn't really know how to go about it. And green building basically is just energy efficiency and solar panels and things like that. And now it's happening. Now there's the NOLA Weiss program, there's Energy Smart, there's solar panels on every other block. I take my bike for a ride and you can find solar panels all over the city. And this is exactly where we need the in-school education, the neighborhood association meetings, the tabling every weekend at different community events, because that's where you find community members in New Orleans, is at these events. Workshops for homeowners so that they can actually come and start learning how to do stormwater management on their property. Because it was the same with green building. No one knew how to do all those things. And now all of a sudden they're calling Energy Smart and NOLA-wise, and they can get those things, in a few months. So we need to do that same thing. We need to ramp up the outreach in schools at those meetings that we've done. Global Green has done this for a long time. Alliance for Affordable Energy was in green building doing this. And you have groups like Bayou Land that are doing this. And we really need to push for that, because once you get that community support, then you start getting these projects on the ground. And that's what you need. And I think y'all are exactly on the right track with saying that.
Great. All right, we're going to have some last comments, then.
Just ask one question really quickly.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry, guys, I was waiting until the last minute, hoping that somebody else would answer the question, but the issue of governance sort of popped into my head, because Jeff Thomas wrote a report on behalf of the Mayor's Advisory Commission just a little while ago, sort of pointing out the fact that the Sewage and Water Board has many more resources to deal with these issues than does Public Works. Public Works, however, deals with 2/3 of the infrastructure, of the stormwater infrastructure, whereas Sewage and Water Board only deals with 1/3 of it. Is that something that's on the table? Is that something that we should address, or is it something that is premature, frankly?
Well, Marco, that's actually backwards. Sewage and Water Board has 2/3 of the infrastructure, and Public Works has 1/3. And we are working on management strategies that are going to integrate that much more than Preston. We've been working on that for the last few years. What the hope is, I would suggest to you, that comes out of this is that the new infrastructure that we're developing will be integrated in a way that there will not be he's got 1/3, he's got the other 1/3. It's the infrastructure. And I think when you do the green things that we're talking about here, you get that. You don't get I've got half, you've got half, a picture. So we're very hopeful for all the things that we've seen right now in relation to the kinds of strategies that will come out of an integrated water strategy, that we will have a unified infrastructure management that gets that done.
We also just recently reformed the Surge and Water Board in terms of the structure of its board. That was at the request of the City Council and done through the leadership of the mayor, because many of us have served on that board and can appreciate what people like Ms. St. Martin has done. I've been to Washington with her, especially after Katrina, for about a dozen times, and watched her secure and watched what it took for her to secure the millions of dollars that it took to start any kind of revival of this city. And but we reformed the board by taking council people off of it. We don't think it's a board of governance that should have elected officials. We don't think we're qualified because we're elected. We thought we should be replaced with engineers, CPAs, water management experts, environmental scientists, and we put that reform option into that opportunity. We did it as an ordinance and sent it to the legislature, and they passed it because that's where it had to happen. We are now changing the Surge and Water Board to conform to that. So this council has been doing quite a bit proactively, in my opinion. And as far as the lady that says about what we ought to do to get reelected, I'm on my last year, gang. Okay? You don't have to reelect me. I can say whatever I want. Okay? And I'm on my 24th year and loving it and love the legacies that I've been able to be a part of. And one of them is this reform of the Surge and Water Board and being able to tout what has been done that has gone overlooked. Go watch General de Gaulle in the next heavy rain or the next hurricane. I mean, that's one that came out of water management. That's one that came out of Surge and Water Board with a leader like Ms. St. Martin. And that's one we had to go to Washington and fight for. And that took a collaboration of years of city, state, and federal SELA plan to put that together. That was a street that led to the bridge that evacuated 3 West Bank parishes. that flooded first in a rainstorm? What kind of evacuation route was that for a hurricane? The other place that flooded secondly the worst was Clearview at the Huey P. Long. So you had an entire west bank of 3 parishes that were landlocked on islands, literally, when you had a hurricane that couldn't evacuate, because both worst flooded areas were the 2 bridges of evacuation. So John Young and I went together after Katrina and did a regional approach under the direction of people like Ms. St. Martin, and made sure that we got that done. We have done that. That's water management. We can evacuate people in a hurricane. And so that's where we have had to work. We've had to work on the crisis side of water management for many years now. And now we're to the point where we can start being proactive and pre-planning and master planning water management for the future. It's not that we haven't considered it and haven't realized its importance. It's that we've had to be crisis reactionary because of the situation we were in order to survive and in order to literally evacuate people and keep, I mean, you could literally drown in your car trying to go to the bridge on General de Gaulle Drive in a hurricane. And what kind of, so that's where our water management had to begin, and it did, and it's done. And now we're ready to do the planning process. The other thing I'll say, in case I don't get another chance to talk, the other part that we've had to do is fight FEMA. And Mr. Cedric Grant, our deputy mayor that gets everything done for us, he has managed in this administration, because we came through an administration that we did not get anything that we needed under FEMA. Ms. St. Martin did for surge and water board. We got very little for the city. Mr. Grant Deputy Mayor Cedric Grant has 4 times the amount of FEMA restoration. And just a minute, sir, you've got your hand up, but you're making me feel like I shouldn't say something. I've waited a week now to come here and talk about this because I was hoping to be here the whole time. But Mr. Grant has gone and gotten us, for the first time, the right amount of restitution that we can clear up maybe the rest of the crisis problems. Then we can begin the planning that all of you that are the experts, so many of you are the experts, especially Mr. Wagner, that's been wonderful, have asked us to do in pre-planning and predicting what we can do in serious water management like the Dutch have done. We know that. We taught the Dutch we gave the Dutch their first pump in the 50s. I was at Tulane University when we did it. And so I believe in this. And we came back, then we came back, went back and said, okay, we helped you in the 50s, now you have to help us in the 2000s. And they were there to help us. And Mr. Wagner has been a big part of that. And so, but we have to solve the crisis first, and we're almost there. And now in the next administration that I won't be a part of, under the Landry administration, they can begin some of this opportunity to plan some serious, real water management. But let me tell you where it really has to start. It has to start at the federal government. FEMA has to get on board with flood maps, absolutely. The Corps has to get on board. Everybody's got to be on the same team. After my 24 years, I can tell you it's not going to work. And if there was ever a mayor that could get them all on the same team, this is the one. And you better not waste those next 4 years. I won't be around to remind you. I'll be here, but I just won't be elected. I'll be around to remind you, but I don't know if I'll be invited. But don't waste that time to begin the proper planning, because the crisis part will probably be at a point that you can do that. But the most important thing that all of you out there that think you want to make a difference can do, in my opinion, is change the Stafford Act in Congress, okay? The Stafford Act of Congress does not allow the emergency help that we need in a crisis in this country. And when it does, we can take our finger out of the dike and quit focusing every bit of our resources on crisis management and start doing more proper planning. Start with Congress. We're there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
for me, and I am very proud to be a partner with Marcia and the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans. For those of you who are not familiar with our wetlands project, there is a poster that they provided tonight. What I want to go and make a comment is that once I think about this, we are in the fight of our lives. If we do not show the nation, and I mean this, if we don't show the nation what we're doing with the money they graciously gave us, it's all for naught. They're not going to do it again. I remember the comment by Senator Waters in Congress. Why should we rebuild New Orleans? It's going to flood again. All I could say, and I remember getting kicked by Junior Rodriguez because I spoke before I thought. I said, why did we rebuild San Francisco? It's going to happen again. We're the United States of America. Our program, we've got waste of money. We've got to show that we're doing it right. And all of the different programs that we've worked with, especially the wetlands, we're showing the nation we're not wasting your money. We're here to stay. Help us out the rest of the way.
Well, we are really getting short on time, and we want to give Mr. Wagner a chance to kind of wrap up. I'll hopefully the folks that are up here can stick around if you have any other questions. Let me tell you that this does my heart very well to see these you all that are so concerned and want to come out and be involved in this. But the council member over here mentioned the word revival. It reminded me of what my grandmother used to say to me about revivals. And she used to say, you know, it isn't how loud you yell amen or how high you jump. It's how straight you walk when you hit the ground. Okay? So when you leave here, you know, then you got to stay involved if we're really going to make a difference and make this happen. So I wish you the best of luck. Keep on. Water is worth it. It's worth your involvement with that. With that, I'll bring up Mr. Wagner to wrap things up.
So I was going to show a few images, and if Julia will help me with that.
We're getting ready to get up. So
I don't think you want to have to sit there.
No, I don't.
But you might want to see. I don't know. I can start by thanking Greater New Orleans Foundation, which we all should do, and the Urban Institute for sponsoring this. You know, we've been doing this for years, and you have to recognize the Sewage and Water Board has become a real partner in this effort to rethink our water systems, and thank the Water Board. These are not obligatory thanks. I mean, these are sincere. I mean, thank the council for showing up, and these council members and the others. I think we're pretty unified, and we don't have much shot without being unified. I especially want to recognize Cedric Grant, though, because, you know, a lot of people stand up in public and can say the right things, but there are people who have to get it done and find out how to pay for it. Part of our job is to stay creative in that aspect. So before I show a few images here, thank those of you who are here, a lot of friends in this room, thank our team. But we need to expand this. This can't be about David Wagner. This is not about one person's vision. It's really all of ours. This is not anything comprehensive. We have at the, let me put these dates out here. We have July 16th. We have a meeting in Lower Nine and St. Bernard Parish, which is a basin meeting where we'll present things we're recommending in the water strategy, which we're doing through a HUD grant, through OCD in the state. Pat Forbes, if he's still here. Yes, thanks, Pat. And GNO Inc. is administering. So July 16th, Lower Nine, St. Bernard, one boat. New Orleans East is July 22nd. August 1st is Orleans, and that location still sought. And then, and then in August 13th, I'm right so far, August 13th is Jefferson Parish. It's really 4 disparate things. You could make it 3. But we're all in this together, you know, and we're here at the sea. We're not Louisville quite. We're really a lot closer to the question. You know, that structure, that flood control, has sunk a foot. It's a 1.5 foot difference since it was built in the 30s, relative sea level. This is real, immeasurable. I hope I can do this. But, and this was in Rolling Stone. I don't normally read Rolling Stone, but I used to. This was this week's, or this issue of Rolling Stone. You know, Pete Dirk is our advisor on this. Pete's one of my great friends out of this. One of the first people who pointed out New Orleans has real opportunities now with these closure structures. So if you look at this boat, and you see where we are. Well, we think we have a tough condition, but if you read that article, if you go look at that article, we're not Miami. You know, we are actually, the muck we're built on is better than the limestone that they're built on, where they cannot keep the water out. We actually have this flood defense system. So we're lucky there, and we can add to that. That's a drawing from a Dutch dialogue. You can get secondary defenses. There are ways we can layer more defenses in this. This is a, you know, we have to make the case we're worth investment, because Serdna and others here, you know, it's an investment proposition. Where are you going to get your money back? Are you going to get back in 30 years? We have to make a case that we're better than that. We have to look regionally. This drawing, you know, we're so in love with our city, we forget that we're in a region, and this is the boat we're living in. This is the protected area that we're living in. We have a culture that's very strong, and I don't think when we say we used to live with water, it's really true, because I don't think our culture is that fragile or that cut off. But if you look at how people used to live, whether this was the lake or the bayou or wherever it was, that was fairly self-sustaining. So maybe the response that we're getting, all of us here, is because it's in our, as Cedric says, it's in our history. It's in our own DNA. It's not somebody else's. And we have this quirky sense of humor, right? I mean, that you got to laugh at this human condition a bit. I mean, I have a hard time at that sometimes, so laugh at me. But, you know, this is the 4th of July, right? And somebody wants to go out there and be a monarchist or something, and he's going to flaunt himself against that on the bayou. But people will seek this water. The asset value is way underdeveloped, you know. So we have this opportunity. We also have this problem. And this way we cope is not necessarily as good as we can adapt. This is Pontiff Park in Jefferson Parish. So as we try to transition these systems, we, as this is saying, don't just think about the Dutch. Don't just think about the international. Think about America. Yes, we are American. Think about our neighbors in Jefferson where they did this. And remember the specifics of our condition, because in none of the other cities that we've talked about is subsidence as severe a problem as it is here. This soil is not stable. It only stays there in a stable way if we keep it wet. We have a lot more potential to go down. We don't want to go down, right? So remember and know where we are. That's one of the fundamental principles, right? Know where you are. And we're in a specific design condition. Out of that, we can create things. I want to find out if I can't make a green roof that'll work here. I want to challenge ourselves. I'm going to challenge the people who work for me, with me. And what we want out of all this, though, is a new vision for our city. I mean, you have to reinvent yourself every 100 years, I think, huh? I mean, you would hope. I mean, architects like to do it every 20 years. I mean, we recycle what we did 20 years ago about every 30, whatever it is. But the point is, we have a chance to become a much more beautiful city. It's already beautiful. But how do we enhance working on the necessities, right? We're not talking about niceties. That's one of our phrases. It's necessities, not niceties. Closing here, just a few. This is not all the scales. Please stick with us for this next period of time. September 4th, we have a public release of these documents to everybody. That's the Dutch government will come back, and hopefully we can say we have a plan. 8 years, it's not so long. As you're saying, Jackie, and as you're nodding, you can't do this kind of thinking really quickly. But hopefully we have a plan we can be behind. And we have these opportunities, whether you see that as 610 or an adaptation with Claiborne up or down. We need water along these rights-of-ways. Well, it's not a worse-looking condition than what we have. We're not asking people to eat a bad meal. It's actually pretty good. There are some technical things in particular places there's just not much space. So if you start to look at Lakeview and you want to build streets that last, this is what Cedric's talking about, if you want to build interceptor streets uptown, we do need to invent these, try these things. The engineers aren't going to be, as you already said, Jeff, they're reluctant. But these are proven things, and they will work and help us. We have to understand, I think, in closing here almost, what's public and what's private, and that it's all going to work together. There really aren't many boundaries. The wetlands are part of the urban area. We have over 60 miles of impounded wetlands within New Orleans, the big area. How many other places have 60 miles of protected wetlands? Well, how do we nourish those? But we also have these little spaces. This is a drawing of something this is a project we're looking at with Manning about New Orleans East redevelopment. This is a more habitable kind of a retail environment than the traditional parking lot go to it. It's not going to diminish the value of the investment. So then last, and this is maybe esoteric. Proust, I don't really read. I just saw this quote. But it really is the way we see it, And I don't know if any of you even realize what's different about that drawing, but that's just a minor adaptation available to fix a problem that the tree has at the sidewalk, and we can fix it a lot less if we'd fix it that way once, and the tree's happier and the kids are happier, and maybe that's the Garden District, or maybe it's Gentilly. But the point is these minor adaptations. When we did Dutch Dialogue 1, it was just a convocation, and we drove the Dutch around everywhere, and they kept saying, you say you have a water problem. Where's the water? Well, that's been the essential search, right? Where is the water? And so as you ask yourself, any project you do, we were, my business partner, Mac Ball, was at the Planning Advisory Committee today at City Hall, and he was there for a project at Newman, an early childhood center, small project. And so they say to him, where's your water retention features in this project? Well, we hadn't really talked to the school about that. And he said, well, I guess it's hard with David. And somebody said, fortunately, it's not just David. You want to ask for a variance on this? No, it's okay. We'll incorporate them in the project. So it's how everyone together sees this potential way we can make this city more beautiful, cooler, more sustainable, better place to live. Thanks to everybody for joining, but we got a direction, hopefully. Hopefully we have a building consensus. We're going to need ourselves together. This is a self-help program. And so can we, will we, and hopefully yes is the answer to both. Thank you.